So good morning. This is Natalie Gilly with the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota. We are hosting a webinar today for the Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network, and we'll be talking about the community of Duluth. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, so you should be able to see the opening slide here welcoming you to the webinar. So our webinar today is a spotlight on Duluth, Minnesota along the North Shore, biking and walking the corridor with friends. So today is April 21st, 2021, and we welcome you all to today's Leadership Network webinar. So just to kick things off today, I'd like to have you introduce yourselves, and we'll use the Zoom chat box to do that. So go ahead and type your name and location in the Zoom chat box, and then indicate whether you have a local biking or walking friends of group in your community, and if you do, which community that is, so we can kind of see where you're at around the state today. We do have a statewide network, and a lot of people from greater Minnesota are joining in addition to the folks in the metro area. So it's always fun to see where you all are joining from when we hold these webinars. So welcome to the webinar from all around the state here. So we have Rochester, Hutchinson, a couple of different Rochester folks in Duluth, Minneapolis, Randall, Detroit Lakes. You guys, if you have the chat box and you can see that on your computer, you can see who is joining today. So welcome to all the folks around the state. The purpose statement, I'll go ahead and read this here. We joined together as a network to connect local bike walk leaders to share stories and ideas about how they're lifting up the walking and biking culture in their communities. We do have a land acknowledgement statement here at BikeMN. We want to acknowledge that we occupy the ancestral land of several indigenous groups, including the Dakota, Ojibwe, Ho-Chunk, Cheyenne, Oto, Iowa, Meskwaki people. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it throughout the generations. We affirm the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota's commitment to a partnership with Native nations and urban Indian communities. Despite centuries of colonial violence, this is still and always will be Indigenous land. Indigenous peoples are still here demonstrating innumerable talents and gifts in the midst of continued oppression. They must be celebrated and uplifted. So you'll see at the bottom of this slide, there is a link there. And if you want to look at the chat box, you can click on the link in the chat box if somebody wants to go ahead and share that in the chat box. If you'd like to see what native land that you are located on. So you can utilize that feature if you'd like. So today is our April webinar. We do have upcoming webinars. We hold these the third Wednesday of the month each month. May 19th, June 16th, and July 21st are our upcoming webinars. These are always held from 11:30 to 12:30 Central Time on Zoom. If you are not already a member of our network, you can email me, natalie@bikemn.org, if you'd like to join, and I'll get you added to our listserv. So the first person that I'm going to welcome to the stage here today to talk a little bit about one of the events that's going on right now is Patrick Stevenson from the 30 Days of Biking. So here is a slide for you, Patrick, and welcome to the webinar.
Hey, thanks, Natalie. Hi, everybody. My name is Patrick Stevenson. So 30 Days of Biking came back this year. It's our 11th year. We've been around for 11 years now. And Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota really supported us this year with these 3 donut days at Mojo Monkey and Baker's Wife. So the third and final one is coming up on April 30th. And all you have to do is bike or walk to Sarah Jane's on that day in the morning, and you'll get a free donut courtesy of Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota. Boom. Thanks for doing that. And then I also want to mention that there's still time to use the hashtag 30 Days of Biking and 30DobMN. So BikeMN also arranged with Eric's Bike Shop to get a gift card to give away. That's $500. That's a gigantic gift card. So all you have to do is use those hashtags and you'll be entered to win. Awesome. So I'm just really thankful to the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota for getting behind us this year and just really, I mean, you have in past years too, but just really doing awesome stuff that engages our community. It's been kind of a tough one this year. The weather locally has been pretty rainy and cold at times. We've had some wonderful days in there. And then there's also things like people have gotten the vaccine, which stopped them from riding on a couple of days. The events in our community, just with violence from police, has been really tough for people in terms of mood. So I feel like it seemed like people really needed it this year, just as an uplifting thing to get them out biking. It's been really special. So one thing I want to announce is that on May 2nd, we are tentatively trying to organize a ride again. We're going to have a ride that meets at Gold Medal Park at 10 a.m. In Minneapolis. We're limiting the ride to 50 people, and it's going to be a $5 ticket. So it'll be from Gold Medal Park to Sociable Cider Works, where we'll have a band and some strict COVID-19 distancing policies to keep everybody safe. So we obviously haven't had events in a very long time, and we're trying to get back into it this year now that everyone is getting vaccinated. I think it's going to be really fun. So that'll be May 2nd, and you can find the event on Facebook under 30 Days of Biking Celebration. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick, and thanks to everyone who's participated in the 30 days biking during over the years, and then also who's participating this year. And I love the message of bringing people back together. This is a time where we really do want to have that social interaction, but in a safe way. And there's some great opportunities to do that. So thanks so much, Patrick. And as always, I see one of the bullet points on the slide, events in Fergus Falls too. So I'll give a shout out to all those 30 Days of Biking rollers in Fergus Falls who continue to participate in big numbers during this event. So the next speaker that I'd like to bring to the stage here today to share the story with you about Duluth is Mike Casey. Mike is a founding member of the River Corridor Coalition, now called Friends of Western Duluth Parks and Trails, where they've been advocating many of the city's 26 plus corridor projects with a heavy focus on the Western Waterfront Trail extension to be a rail and trail system with the Lake Superior and Mississippi Railroad, also the Cross City Trail. Mike is involved with We Walk in Duluth and a founding member of Duluth Bikes, and currently serves on the 5th District on the Duluth Transit Authority Board. So welcome to the webinar, Mike Casey. And Mike, you are on mute.
Sorry about that.
No problem, go ahead.
Thanks, Natalie, and thanks for BikeMN to help us showcase Duluth a little bit here today. And hopefully I'll draw your attention a little bit further west, a little bit away from the lake and the bridge. So I am a member of a group called Friends of Western Duluth Parks and Trails. So I'll be talking mainly about the Cross City Trail today. Most folks around the state know Duluth for its iconic bridge and canal and the big lake. The Cross City Trail and excuse the pronunciation, Wabanashikina Trail will help bring attention to the western side of Duluth and the water that feeds into the big lake. This photo you see on this first slide is of the latest segment of the Cross City Trail, segment 2. It's my wife. We live out in Western Duluth and she works downtown. So she was pretty excited about the trail finally getting closer and closer. So she actually went out and bought an electric bike to help with that push downtown. This segment was actually a little controversial from the start because City Hall felt it wouldn't be used, yet the citizens spoke up and supported it. It kind of goes down along what I call the working harbor. And a lot of people haven't seen that side, so it's pretty interesting. It has seen large numbers of folks using it, and it isn't even officially open yet. One of the side notes here is the river estuary is going through a lot of cleanup now, AOC projects they call it, area of concern. Erie Pier Ponds is going to close this segment down for about a year, a portion of this segment. So if you get up here, you can have a chance to see the whole segment before end of June, I think it'll be closed. But a little info about our group. We are a citizens group formed back in 2014 around the St. Louis River Corridor Initiative, where the mayor proposed over 24 recreational projects in the western side of Duluth through a half and half tourism tax that you pay when you come to visit our fine city. We participated at some level on most all of these projects with a focus on the Cross City Trail and another trail project at the time called the extension of the Western Waterfront Trail. It's existing about 3.5 miles right now. but it's going to be extended all the way to Fond du Lac. It's now named the Wabanishikana Trail. It means the Martin Clan Trail. It's an Ojibwe name. It's actually got an interpretive signage attached to it. So when the segments are built, you'll see the rich history of Duluth, which really is starts out west. We advocated for a rail and trail system to keep tourist train currently using that corridor. You may have heard of that effort if you are familiar with the train called the Lake Superior Mississippi Railroad. The next slide shows the Cross-City Trail in the gap that we currently have and how it connects with the Munger Trail on the southwest, and then the Lake Walk on the northeast side, the orange line, basically, and the Gitchigami. That connects to the Gitchigami then. And that's all part of the state's Route 41 system from Minneapolis to the Canadian border. It also has, the Cross-City Trail also has potential to connect to other neighboring communities to our north, direct north, like Proctor and Hermantown, and to our south, Superior in Wisconsin. So the next slide shows the local significance. You'll see the Wabanishikana Trail in orange, and it connects up to the Cross-City Trail, and then that connects to Lake Walk, and then the Gitchigami. The other bluer lower line is the Munger Trail, you're probably all familiar with. That will also connect as well. So, so you see the orange line start, that's the beginnings of Duluth, I call it, the European part of Duluth. That's the Fond du Lac. Well, the natives settled there too, but that's the Fond du Lac area, and the Martin Trail will start there and follow through into Duluth. And it's a multi-use trail, natural surface trail, so it'll make a great connection. But hopefully in the future we'll be able to build a more direct route out in that area. The next slide is a little bit more focused on the local significance. It shows the Munger Trail, Cross-City Trail, and the Lake Walk as an end-to-end, and serves our daily needs by connecting many of the neighborhoods, which we have a lot. Duluth is a long and narrow city, and out west we only have a highway that connects the neighborhoods besides the river estuary. I'll add here that we now have a national designated water trail on the St. Louis River estuary, so come on up to Duluth, bring a paddle device or any kind of boat and enjoy that as well. It's a wonderful natural area. The Cross-City Trail vision is to be a backbone or spine concept, the most direct route as possible. It's built mostly with federal funds, TA funds, so it needs to fit those requirements. You know, the all ages and abilities, 10-foot wide minimum, no steep grades. We hope that while it's being built, it'll provide inspiration for spur trails to connect to other destinations. We also have, you can see the little blue oval there, we have the Twin Ports Interchange Project. We call it the Can of Worms. That is happening now where MnDOT is rebuilding that area. You'll come into that construction as you come to town. It's in Lincoln Park, our craft district. You might be familiar with that, the breweries and all the new shops and eats there. This is taking out the Cross-City Trail for up to 3 years in this area. So the city, with some help from the advocates, is building our first protected bike lane, believe it or not, as a way to help keep the trail intact during construction and maybe keep it long-term if all works out well for the citizens in the business district. We really need to thank the Lincoln Park Business District for their support, because as you know, it took a couple parking spots away. So if you are in town, be sure to thank them when visiting the craft district, their breweries and all the food and shops. It may be the best way to get there during the construction by bike. Also, MnDOT and Wisconsin DOT are currently working through the beginning phases of the Blotnick Bridge that connects Superior to Duluth. And it hopefully has a potential, they're potentially rebuilding it, researching its end-of-life options. This project could provide a bike ped infrastructure between the cities and states at long last. And we're really hopeful with the new focus on transportation and the money that bikes and peds might not make it into the cut, but hopefully with some of this new focus, we'll get that as part of the project. The next slide shows the current status of the Cross City Trail, basically from Canal Park to where you see the Riverside. That's the Cross City Trail. And so the work we've done this past winter, that's what I'll focus on here now. The Cross City Trail has two significant segments. Segment 1 was built in 2013, and segment 2, as you noted earlier, was completed last year. So 5.5 miles of the 7 miles or so are completed. The trail's current terminus is now in the heart of West Duluth, Irving Park. That you can see that upper white dot there. We now have this last mile, as we call it, actually maybe 1.5 miles left to be built. The Cross City Trail vision has always been below the highway, but for complicated reasons, and some may argue good reasons, the vision changed when the Irving community pushed back on how it would go through their neighborhood. Because the city presented this to the community late, there was little time to make changes, so the mayor decided to build the trail above the highway, building one segment there. This was part of a larger project the mayor was working on that turned out to be the St. Louis River Corridor Initiative. This was to bring attention to the western end of Duluth, focused on recreation. The corridor project has been very successful and worthy, but has caused many issues for the long-term vision of the Cross City Trail. The master plan for the trail that was developed during the conflict has both the upper and lower routes within it, and the community fought hard to keep the lower route in the plan. It wasn't there initially, so through a lot of work, it was included in the plan. And the city has worked only on the upper. They've been focused on that, or above Highway 23. This is the advocacy work the Cross City Trail Coalition has been working on, bringing back the original vision of the Cross City Trail, a transportation route below the highway. And the next slide, you'll see a graphic that we used to refocus the Cross City Trail to its original vision this past winter. Back in 2019, we formed a coalition around the Cross City Trail to bring public's voice to the table to support the request and to request the city to focus on the lower road. Some of these people have been part of advocacy groups around active living that don't exist anymore for many years, like Fit City Duluth, Healthy Duluth, and a few more. And currently we have Irving Community Club, Zeitgeist, Friends of the Lake Walk, We Walk in Duluth, Duluth Bikes, to name a few, along with a few citizens. On the next slide, you'll see that these route options from the previous one, that even when the new administration, with the new administration coming on board, the city has continued to pursue the upper red route. You can see the red and green lines on this are in the master plan, upper and lower we call them. The other lines are routes that residents have identified as feasible. And you can see also there we have some matrices about safety, directness, availability, accessibility, and you can kind of see that the red line is the one that goes out of the way, and Duluth is a hilly area. So in this area, you're going, anytime you see it go away from the main line, it's going uphill. So in the next slide, you'll see a graphic of more detail of that. So you can see in this one why the red route is not for transportation and not supported by the citizens. It's extra length, it's steep grades. You don't see it here, but there's a lack of destinations there. And it potentially crosses this busy Highway 23 twice at grade. So it's quite a dramatic change, and we really wanted to see this be a premier accessible trail, for all ages and abilities. So that's what we've been working on. The next slide, you'll see some data. You can see this graphic is segment 3. Segment 3 is the one that they're working on now that got funded with TA monies. And it's singled out here in this graphic. This is the city's latest push to build above the highway to the upper road. This slide shows why it's not supported and brings some data to the conversation. It's not useful for all ages and abilities because of the length and grades. One of our people that joined the coalition brought up the fact that 1 in 5 West Duluthians identify as having a disability of some kind, which was startling to me. I didn't realize it at the time. And the lower one, it looks like a barcode. Those white lines indicate where the grade is over 5%. And you can see at the later end towards the B portion there, it really climbs pretty high. So those and advocate for people with disabilities, I'm not a big fan of that section. So to sum up, where we are now is the city has agreed now to spend resources on the lower route, which it hadn't before, looking at building a couple lower route sections instead of focusing on the upper red route at this time. This comes after 3 months of very intensive advocacy efforts from a small group of residents in this Cross City Trail Coalition. How we did this, I'll mention a few steps. We met with the mayor to assure the mayor knows what we knew. Because your mayors don't always hear everything. Along with that, we shared the same information with a few key councilors, asking for their support. We spoke at all the MPO advisory committee meetings, the TAC, the BPAC, their board meeting, and we even spoke at the ATP, who awards the TA funding, to let them know the citizens are full support of the lower route. We clarified what federal funding requirements are and worked through all that, the TA, STIP, the TIP, all that confusing work. We got some op-eds in the newspaper. We mobilized many residents to reach out to the mayor and council. And we did our own research on routes, rights of ways, utilities, and land ownership, type of stuff. With some luck, we will complete the long-held vision of the Cross City Trail in the near future, maybe next 5 to 10 years. Just to note that the James Oberstar, our representative, had the vision for this Cross City connector when the freeway came through in the mid-70s. So this has been a vision for a long time. So hopefully we'll get it done here pretty soon. One other note to draw attention to Western Duluth: whenever you're coming to Duluth from the south, you might want to consider coming into Duluth, get off at Hinckley and take Highway 23. You'll come through Fond du Lac, Gary, Morgan Park, my neighborhood, all these other neighborhoods that you'll experience as you come through town, and through Lincoln Park and your other destinations up north. It's a great scenic ride, and it'll only take you 15 minutes longer. Again, thanks, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mike. This is a great presentation, and I know a lot of the people on this call today might have been to Duluth before and may be interested in going, and appreciate the information you've shared on the upcoming trail projects here. So we do have one question from the chat box here. How did and do you get the federal grant?
Oh, the city makes the application, and through the ATP. The Transportation Alternative Funds. We don't get them. I mean, we just advocate for the city for the alignments that they're picking and working on. So the city of Duluth has done the applications for that.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. That's helpful to just kind of understand how that fits together. And we'll have a little bit more information as we lead into our second speaker today to share how our connection with at the federal level relates to some of this work and these projects and how it rolls out on the ground. So we do have one other question in the chat box here. And this is a question about the upper red route and what has been the argument for pursuing that route.
Well, the argument to pursue that route was the mayor's push for this recreational trail. It actually, his vision was to convert the Cross City Trail to a natural surface trail that was always designated to be, it's called the Upper DWP, and it's now part of the Duluth Traverse. It really was a way to take the conflict that happened in the urban community to bolster and get funding for the recreational side of his new project. So it's still there. We still want to make the connections to it. It'll be a great loop. and they are moving forward with the DWP. It's part of our initiative too. We've asked that the Cross City Trail no longer be named above Grand Avenue, so they've agreed to that as well. So I'll be part of what they call the DWP trail system. So, you know, it's just another part of the network, and it's worthy. Yet it's been over 40 years to get this Cross City Trail built, so that's what we've been advocating for, to get done first.
Cool, thanks for that. And I'm seeing some conversation here in the chat box. Just people are excited and happy to see Duluth in the presentation today, and are planning trips to Duluth to go biking. And so this is relevant to this network of folks statewide that are gonna be interested in coming to your community. So thanks for all this information, Mike.
Great, thank you.
So I'm going to pivot to our other speaker today, and we will have some closing time at the end of the webinar to ask questions of either our second speaker or questions that you might think of for Mike. Feel free to queue those up in the chat box if you would like. We're watching that chat box to make sure that your questions get asked to the speakers, and we can showcase those for you. So thank you, Mike. So the second speaker we have on our speaker panel today, beyond our event promotion by Patrick Stevenson for 30 Days of Biking, we had, we will pivot to Karl Hedlund. He is serving with the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota. He facilitates stakeholder connection and collaboration to make communities more bicycle friendly. He's adapted the Bikeable Community Workshop program to continue entirely remotely in 2021. Through virtual presentations, breakout discussions, and an independent bike audit, workshop participants will assess their community's bicycle-friendly efforts and facilities while creating a personalized action plan. Additionally, he coordinates the Minnesota Higher Education Bike Network. This service helps students, professors, and campus staff share knowledge and resources to improve campus biking. So we welcome Karl to the webinar. Welcome, Karl.
Thank you, Natalie. I'm glad to be here. So today, my short time with you, I'll be highlighting my experience at the National Bike Summit, which was held entirely remotely this year in the first week of March, last couple of days of February. Of course, it's a little bittersweet that this program was held remotely. As similar to the local Minnesota Summit that hopefully many of you attended, put on by BikeMN, ease of access and attendance really skyrocketed with the National Bike Summit not being able to be in DC, but being able to attend, and for those of you out of state, not having to come into the Twin Cities, but being able to join us virtually. Throughout my presentation today, I'm going to be bookending each end with a highlighted clip and from 2 of the plenary sessions during this workshop. And then throughout also sharing some of my personal experience with the more customizable courses and highlighting some of those silver linings that were experienced through COVID that will carry on past what has been implemented and done to problem solve this year, and what we've learned has been a benefit moving forward, paralleled with some of the programs that I'm responsible for that Natalie just spoke to. If you want to progress on, Natalie. So similar to what Mike was just sharing, when we met yesterday, some of the conversations around the potential for funding and momentum with Secretary Pete. We were lucky enough to have Pete speak with us on the final day of this summit. And Mike was really hoping that sometime soon we might see Pete join us. So this is just a short clip of a longer video that is fully accessible out there on YouTube. I encourage you to watch it. It's Pete responding to a question about his experience as mayor of South Bend and becoming a bicycle-friendly community in the Midwest.
So let's say, Yeah, I mean, part of what we set out to do was demonstrate that smaller communities, Midwestern communities, communities in more politically conservative areas had just as much to benefit from good bike policy as anywhere else. So we really presented complete streets the way we saw it, which was as a quality of life issue. That better access to biking and walking was fundamental to quality of life in South Bend. And as we pursued that, we knew there was a lot of convincing to do. But it was part of how we were opening up a process that everybody could participate in to create a city that brought everybody to the table and explain why it was good for residents, why it was good for businesses. We talked about the need to attract and retain younger residents who have an expectation of being able to get around without having to jump in a car and drag 2 tons of metal with them anytime they're going anywhere.
I'm highlighting that clip because to me, it spoke to a lot of the similar things of these things we're highlighting every conversation we have during these monthly webinars and in our regular daily work. And for me, it's inspiring to hear a lot of that same language being mimicked on the federal level, and hopeful for what is coming ahead. If you want to progress on, Natalie. So I spoke to the bittersweetness of not being in DC. One of my favorite things to do is travel, and the best way I know to get to know a city is getting out on my bike and exploring it. This was really able to be salvaged a little bit through a series of virtual bike tours that went on through DC. It was paralleling both a history lesson with alongside a live bike tour. This was led by DC cycling concierge. Jeffrey Miller was doing the biking. So there were rides throughout different times of the day and night, showing some of the infrastructure. It progressed on through history as well as highlighting a lot of the current events. Firstly, it followed Lincoln's commute to the White House, the 1814 British invasion of DC, and then more in current events in the energy and the transformation that DC has felt over the last 4 years. The highlighting BLM Plaza, the Women's March following recent elections, clearing of St. John's Church, and following January 6th, a lot of the biking infrastructure that was shut down, what is highlighted in the bottom right through fencing and protections around the Capitol building that have really interrupted normal commute routes there. Progressing on. So in the past, if you're a regular attendee of these webinars, you've heard me speak about demonstration projects and the opportunity to implement temporary, cheap, short-term testing of potential bike infrastructure and the opportunity it provides for authentic engagement with community to really learn what is and isn't working before there is final implementation of infrastructure. So there was a series I attended called the Slow Streets and Quick Builds, Infrastructure in the Age of COVID. So in response to COVID, we saw these slow streets that were being implemented. Here you see some pictures from Oakland, which the speaker was really able to share the success stories as well as the quick failures they were able to experience from all of these usual stops and bureaucracy that keep systems from happening and implementing these quick, cheap tests of infrastructure. But in response to COVID, there was so much more momentum and ability to make these things happen quickly. It's something that I'm really hoping we're able to carry forward with. And if you have the opportunity to work with MnDOT or BikeMN myself to implement some of these demonstration projects that we are regularly pitching to you, I think it's a great opportunity to keep going with that. And then, sure, there we go. Bringing biking online. So Natalie mentioned the BCW program as well as the Higher Education Network. So we're always voiced with this question of how to work through the logistics of getting large numbers of people onboarded with bicycle education, bicycle advocacy, bicycle encouragement. And we were really forced this year to take things virtually, as well as create video content that can really outlive the year of 2020. So highlighted here, we had the similar thing that was seen with Colorado State, as well as the city of Oregon. In having this, the generation that is coming up is really they're tech savvy. They really enjoy and rely on short, bite-sized information pieces to get excited, get educated, get encouraged to get out on their bikes. And this year we were forced to adapt ingrained systems of classroom education, on-street education, to be able to create short video clips or online engagement tools with quizzes and checkboxes as well, to this material that can really outlive and keep building momentum going forward as well. One big aspect of the National Bike Summit, of course, is legislation. Myself, as well as many higher education employees, as state employees, have some barriers to entry to participating in this. So there were alternative sessions for higher education individuals. Here, highlighting some of BFU application adaptations, really adjusting some of the language and requirements around equity, diversity, inclusion, which were adapted and included in 2020. Following this, there was a happy hour of sorts for people from all across the country. It was great to see a lot of familiar faces. I know a few people who were on this call I saw on the participant list were on that conversation with me. And that's something we're really trying to emulate in our state level education network, that being these regular conversations with your peers to be able to share what hurdles you're dealing with, what type of similar funding, strategies or solutions you might be finding. We've got our next monthly call coming up for state higher ed folks coming up next Thursday on April 29th. A little pitch, if you have any interest in joining that conversation, you can reach out to me, or we'll have it posted out there as well. Wrapping up the individual sessions that I attended and my own work here, of course, sneaking in a couple pitches. I really want to end bookmarking with another plenary session. I opened with some level of momentum and excitement with Pete. I want to make sure that we are remembering there's still a lot of work to do. This is highlighting Charles T. Brown's arrested mobility movement. It's exploring the impacts of over-policing BIPOC mobility in the US, highlighting the social, political, economic, and health impacts of racial disparities in transportation, and examining the ways in which our approaches to research, planning, policy, and design must be reimagined.
See, we have to talk about, as I wrap up here, what it means to be a bicycle-friendly community, a strong town, or America's best bike cities in America. It is time to challenge what it means to be friendly or strong, and yet inequitable and exclusive. So the question to you to think about is, what does it mean to be a bicycle community or a strong town when Black and brown and low-income people lack safe, equitable, and inclusive access to the very infrastructure, the programs, and the initiatives that these communities are rewarded for? See, and these are all my friends. But for every Portland, there is an East Portland. For every Hoboken, New Jersey, there's a Camden, New Jersey. For every Tampa, Florida, there is a Jacksonville, Florida. For every Manhattan, there is a Bronx. For every Chicago, there is a South Side. And so you may be asking the question, or you may make the comment, we're the bicycle community. We're all in this together. We feel you. No, you do not. We are not in the same boat, but we are in the same storm. There is a huge difference, and a difference that I need you to acknowledge. And I need you to acknowledge that difference right now, because Black people are tired. They can't go jogging. They can't run. They can't be a 10-year-old walking with a grandmother, grandfather. They can't breathe. They can't live. They are tired. Our mobility has been arrested.
With the limited time I have here today, I really have the intention of letting a lot of Charles T. Brown's words speak for themselves. I really encourage you to go out there on YouTube and see the entirety of his presentation. I'll make sure it's included in the follow-up emails that are sent out. Natalie, if you want to progress on to the next slide. The video, it really highlights this message of arrested mobility and the levels in which there are disparities and actions need to be done. Speaking here from BikeMN's 38th Street offices, we felt a lot of positive energy and momentum in the city today, and I hope we can keep building off of that while keeping in mind, I'm sure some of you saw the arrests that were made in New Jersey that were really starting to go a little viral, of the group of teens earlier this week who were arrested for riding their bikes without bicycle registration. Traffic stops really are often people's first and only interaction with police, and I hope we can keep building that in a positive way. And the video, it highlights this moment of arrested mobility, but it also, I've got action number 1 highlighted on the bottom of the screen here. There is a list of 15 action items that Charles presents that are really tangible and deliverable, that I won't speak to with my own voice here, but I'm really hoping you go out and watch it yourself. If you want to move on, Natalie. Of course, as a state employee, it's not my place here to speak to the legislative agenda, but the National Bike Summit, I can't speak to it without mentioning really the opportunity that it presents to engage with the state calls, the local calls with legislators this year, really focusing on Transit Actions Alternatives Act and Complete Streets Bill, both in the Senate and the House. I'll have to plead the fifth a little bit if other BikeMN staff want to speak to those on any questions, but that was my experience at the National Bike Summit. I really hope that they will continue creating some ease of access with virtual opportunities in the future, as I'm sure us here at BikeMN will continue to learn from and include, as we saw more participation from those around the state in our own summit this year.
Thanks for sharing this information, Karl. And we have a little bit of chat going on in the chat box. Just, it sounds like some people had possibly sat in on some of the presentations that you've been referring to and you mentioned in your presentation today. And there was a question about the YouTube link. Thank you, for Michelle, for providing the link for the first video that you shared, Karl. And again, Karl mentioned that we'll have some information in our follow-up email as a recap of this webinar that'll go out to our leadership network. So if you're on the listserv, you'll get that link and the wrap-up information from today's presentation. If you'd like to be added to that and you would like to get these links and this information, please send me an email and I'll get you added to that listserv. So,
sorry, pulling up the video. I'll send it in the.
Okay, well, there you go. So Karl is engaged and will get you what you need. Please reach out if you'd like something and you'd like to get connected with this content that was presented to you today. So I appreciate folks that are engaging in the chat box to get links shared and to share comments as well on how you appreciate the content that was presented at the National Bike Summit. So there is a couple of things I want to close with here. Karl, do you want to speak to the Bikeable Community Workshop for a moment here, and then we'll take any questions you might have from Karl or for Mike?
Of course. As I mentioned quickly, the remote bicycle community workshops are quickly sneaking up on us. As of today, we're officially 2 weeks away from both events in Fridley and Fergus Falls. These will be happening virtually. I'm really feeling positive that we also have in-person workshops or in-person bike ride portions led by the local hosts as well happening for those events. If you're a resident and you haven't already heard or received an official invitation, please feel free to contact me. My email's right there on the screen. I think we've also got a couple of the hosts for those in the chat box there for if you would rather reach out to someone locally to get more involved with that process as well.
Thanks, Karl. And I think this is awesome to just, first of all, know that the folks that are leading these different community efforts are on the webinar live here. Many of them are that are participating in these monthly leadership network webinars, and also the representation statewide. There's a couple of metro communities here, Fridley and Mahtomedi. However, you also see that Grand Marais all the way along the North Shore, our first silver level Greater Minnesota community. I'll just give a plug for that. And Fergus Falls out in the western part of the state and Jackson in the southern part of the state are all hosting communities. So it's great to see the diversity across the states in these this representation for this work. So thanks for that, Karl, and thanks for leading this effort in a unprecedented way remotely this year and keeping the wheels turning. So I'll pause for a moment here. Mike's on the call, Karl's on the call, and I open it up for any questions that you might have for either speaker today. I have a couple closing announcements I'll make at the end, but we'll hold a few minutes here. If you do have any questions you'd like to type into the chat box, or if you would like to unmute your line, feel free to ask the question directly if you would like.
I guess I have a question for Mike, and you probably already covered this, but what percentage of the trail system did you say is completed already?
Well, if you're speaking of the Cross City Trail, it's about 5.5 miles of the 7 is done. The Lake Walk that you're familiar with, you might not be familiar with the Lake Walk. Most people just see it in the Canal Park area, but that actually goes all the way out to Brighton Beach, and that's completed. On the Martin Trail, the Wabandashikan Trail, it's 3.3 miles of that is a natural surface trail that's already existing, and there's about another 10 or so miles yet to be built.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Ted, and for speaking to that, Mike. And I don't know if, well, I think we have a raise hand function. If there's anyone that's been inspired to ride in Duluth or maybe revisit a trip you've previously had in Duluth after hearing the presentation today, you might share that as well. It's always exciting to get firsthand accounts from communities around the state, and fun to see what's going on up along the North Shore in the community of Duluth in particular. So there is a question here for you, Mike. What would be the best source for maps if one was going to visit Duluth to ride or hike?
The city of Duluth has a great recreational map out. If I had quick fingers and quick mind, I could drop it in the chat. If you go to the city of Duluth in the Parks Department, you'll find it there. It's downloadable, and they actually have hard copies for free. It shows all the outdoor activities in the area, including the single track trails. We got close to 100 miles of that as well. If you're into mountain biking, that is probably the most comprehensive source. But you can also go to crosscitytrailduluth.com. That's my website. I'm not a web developer, but it's what we've been maintaining to keep people informed on the Cross City Trail itself.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Luke.
So I had asked the question about if anybody would like to raise their hand to identify whether you were inspired by this presentation to go ride in Duluth, and if you were wanting to share anything about your experience in Duluth or your excitement to return to Duluth after hearing what you did today. And I'll put the spotlight on Michelle if you'd like to share anything.
I don't want to share anything. I have a question. I'm so excited about all of the projects going on in Duluth, and I would love to see like either video tours or before, during, and afters, because they're just, I think it's just another way to share all of the good news. And especially, not that I want to add to anybody's pile of work, but just saying it'd be fun to see some videos and pics of the progress. And can't wait to go back.
I'll mention, if you go to now I used to work in GIS, so I had access to Esri. So I made a story map of the Cross City Trail. but that might be failing right now because I don't have access to it anymore. But if you go to our website, crosscitytrailduluth.com, there is an attempt at a story map there that has short videos of all the segments. And you can check that out. That has a lot of before.
All right, Mike, you got a thumbs up on that one. Thanks for the question, Michelle. And it sounds like people want to know where they should ride, and it sounds like there's so many options. It's really wonderful to hear. Not only is there many places to ride already, as it were today, that there's much coming down the line. And it's always interesting to me as I see you present these pictures. I knew that Duluth is long and skinny as far as the layout, but just to see how much there is. And how much infrastructure there is along that route and what's being planned is exciting. So.
Yeah, and if you're into, if you're into history, Duluth's rich history is actually out west. We always say that's where the money was made and the money was stored out east. So this industrial side of town, so this Western Waterfront Trail and the Cross City Trail kind of highlight that and gives you access to that stuff.
Two of my friends and I had been talking about going to Duluth since January. So when I saw this come up as a topic, I had the opportunity to use the word serendipitous in conversation, which is not something to be overlooked.
Very good, thank you. I do have a couple of closing announcements I'd like to share with the group here, and I'll share my screen again. I stopped sharing it so that we could see the faces of those who were going on video and wanted to have group dialogue today about this topic of Duluth and the National Bike Summit. But I'll share my screen again here so that we can go back to the presentation and close with two different announcements here. The first one, you've heard of us talk about this before, Walk, Bike, Fun. I want to bring Michelle to the stage here to share a little bit about Walk, Bike, Fun training, what it's looking like and what's happened already and what's coming down the line here for summer 2021. So Michelle, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you, Natalie. I appreciate the time to share what's going on with Walk, Bike, Fun. We have developed online a self-paced series of modules to take educators through what they would have experienced if we were in person at our full day training. So we have split up our full day training into 3 parts. And the second part we are currently doing at this point in time. Today will be our second live Zoom training that is 90 minutes long. And so everyone that has gone through part 1 has access to part 2. And there are several dates left, today being one of them, Friday being another one, where they can register and participate in that part 2 training. We will be having more of our live Zoom trainings in the near future, and those will be updated as we go. Then part 3 is going to be in person on bike, yay! And we'll have one in Minneapolis, one in St. Paul, and hoping to get out to the other locations in Minnesota where there are at least 5 to 8 educators that have completed parts 1 and 2. So this is the way that the Walk, Bike, Fun training is going at this point in time. Please reach out to your school districts, your park and rec, community ed, any organization that has youth programming happening, and let them know that Walk, Bike, Fun training is available. And my email is there, so they can reach me via michelle@bikemn.org, or my number is also there. Would love to get more people registered and through the Walk, Bike, Fun training. I also want to put in a plug for May 5th. So what's special about May 5th? It is the Bike or Walk to Anywhere Day formerly known as the Bike to School Day, but because of what's happening with hybrid learning and distance learning, MnDOT has changed the title to be Bike to Anywhere Day. And so if you have schools that are going to host an event or promote walking or biking for their students, there is a website that I will put in the chat box that they can get more information about this event on May 5th. And MnDOT also has a poster contest that is happening regarding this this event. So reach out to their website that I put in the chat box. Let me know if you have any questions, if you need any help learning more about what's happening with Walk Bike Fun, and I would be happy to talk to you. Have a good one, everybody.
Thanks, Michelle. And I know these were going to be kind of closing updates for the webinar, but we do have one question in the chat box for you, Michelle. So we have a question: can we participate in the virtual trainings as a refresher if we have already completed the walk bike training in a previous year?
Absolutely, you sure can.
Thanks. And we have lots of chats here going on to thank Mike for the Duluth presentation as well. So this is really cool to see, and some interest in the bicycle friendly community program and project and opportunity. You know, of course, with bikeable community workshops, or excuse me, bicycle friendly community, you heard from Charles Brown about what the vision might be for how that might evolve in the future to become more equitable. And, you know, with bikeable walk bike fun, bike education is a core component to being a bicycle friendly community. So definitely engage with Michelle, reach out to her if you'd like walk bike fun training for your teachers and to get engaged in this program here. So thank you so much, Michelle. So I have one more slide. It looks like my slide is not going to load, but I will hand the floor over for our final event plug of the day here. We can't, you know, speak about 30 days of biking in April and wrapping up April leading into May without sharing what is going on in May. So I will hand the floor over to Ted to speak just a little bit about how exciting May is for biking in Minnesota.
Yeah, thanks, Natalie. Yeah, so just as Michelle was saying, you know, May is usually, well, it is bike month. It's just a little bit different this year, of course, and kind of the way that things are going on. So BikeMN is doing some story gathering. And some of you have already done this, so thank you so much. But really simple way for you to kind of tell us, you know, what you love about biking and walking in Minnesota. And then you can be entered for drawing for a bag made by Sturdy Bag Designs, which is a Minnesota maker that many of you have probably seen for bike packing gear and all kinds of fun stuff like that. So yeah, just kind of a fun way to kind of see, you know, what other folks are doing around the state and kind of learn more about, you know, why people love biking here.
Thanks, Ted. It's exciting to hear about people getting rolling this year in 2021, more people getting on bikes and participating in these. So there's opportunities to win free things. There is opportunities to be social in a safe way and participate in some of these programs that we've spoke about today and our speakers have discussed today. So I just want to close the webinar today to thank our speakers for presenting and for thanking everyone here for participating in the webinar today. Thanks for being part of the Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network and for participating in these monthly webinars. We appreciate your engagement here in the dialogue and hope that you will join us again in the future on our third Wednesday of the month here on Zoom. So thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks.